Alright, this is the first video of a new YouTube series of restoring the X2. So I've already got done doing the Superjet. We're now going to be ripping everything out and completely redoing all the turf, all the paint. We're going to be doing a Yamaha swap, so we're going to be putting a 61X 62T in this one as well, just like we did to that one. So it does require a current conversion bracket, and I'll get into that. But for now, first step is to just dismantle everything. So I'm going to be selling everything in here, basically. I've already put an Umi steering, but I'm going to take it off and use it, but I got to paint the hole and everything. But anyways, everything in here is I'm going to sell. I'm even going to be putting a new Yamaha gas tank in there, new engine, new carb, new B-pipe mod, the mod version, so it'll fit. Yeah, alright, let's get stripping it down. Okay, I'm going to stop the video. Basically everything's taken out. A few things, I just got to pull these out. Pretty straightforward. And everything's taken out. The rest of it can just come out with the engine, so I'm going to undo the 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the other side, that looks like it might be kind of hard to get to. We'll see what I can do to get that off. It looks like I'm going to have to take this exhaust pipe out. So 3 bolt holes there. Then I can get to the engine mounts. Everything else is actually unplugged. So I can actually just pull this engine out, and then the rest is just removing the steering section here, and that will be gutted. Stay tuned. So now that the engine is pulled, I've degreased everything and let it sit for 20 minutes, and then just kind of sprayed it off. I used a shop vac to suck up all the water. Once all the water's sucked up, I then took Dawn dish soap, sprayed it everywhere. This is actually kind of nice. It actually sprays it in a foam, so it works perfect for cleaning engine bays. You can get in all the corners. I even use this on my dishes. It's awesome. But yeah, sprayed on dish soap, spray it everywhere. Then you're just gonna take a scratch pad and you're just gonna scrub everything. You want to have as much as the grease off and grime off as you can. And then we're going to do a light sanding. Before we sand it, we're probably going to grind off a few of these things. I'm doing a Yamasaki 701 swap, so some of this stuff can just go. So I'm going to grind it flat and probably fiberglass it. But everything else I've already removed, and I'm just going to be cleaning all the parts now. So I got this trimmed up and squared away so that it fits nicely. This just pops out. I just kind of left a little border so it can sit down on something. And that fits so nicely. So I'm just going to glass that in and make it a seamless transition. So, yep. So I'm using the fairing compound to even out the hole so that it's flush with the gas fill that I bought. It was a little bit sunken in on some areas. I did my best to kind of raise it up on all corners. but I did notice I had to level out a few areas. So what I'm doing is filling all the way up to this line here. That way there's no unevenness on this side or this side or this side or this side. It'll all just be seamless transition into the hole. I also used the fairing compound for filling in the rest of the divots. The fiberglass did a good job to give it some strength, but to fill in all the rest of the pinholes and small recessed areas, I'm using the fairing compound. Okay, I got it all sealed in. I'll just kind of take a close look at it. I used epoxy and fiberglass first to seal it in, and then I used a fairing compound to kind of flatten it up to the curve area. And because there was some highs and lows to get this plate to fit correctly. Then I actually used the pinhole to fill in all the little red pinholes there. It even filled in all these little ones here. So it's good to do. But yeah, it turned out real nice. And I also used it here to fill in this area here. This is all smooth now. Got the pinholes filled, all the little dips and lows. Looks good. Just more footage of me evening this area out. I also glassed it inside and put more of the fairing compound, which I will now sand. All smooth. So that red stuff and green stuff will kind of work together to fill in all the highs and lows. Doesn't look the greatest, but once you put a primer over it, you won't even see any of this. All this is smooth. So let me show you a type of fiberglass repair that I use. I'm not sure how many people also use this technique, but these ribs had some weaknesses in them, and you can actually kind of see some brittleness to them. So what I did, I made kind of a concoction of, I pulled apart fiberglass from a fiberglass mat, and I put it in a cup with epoxy, and I thickened it up with Cabasil. So I've got epoxy, Cabasil, and then pulled apart fiberglass strands, and I just kind of mix it all together, and I get this really strong glob material that you can kind of push into corners, push into areas that you normally couldn't easily do with just getting wet fiberglass and laying it down. Because if you've ever done fiberglassing, it's kind of hard to go over corners. It likes to create air pockets instead. So you have to usually do like a flat piece here, and then a flat piece here, and a flat piece there. And then the corners you kind of have to build up the sides so the corners meet. But instead, you can just kind of gloop this on, and it's really strong. Having that many fiberglass strands in a glob that has no air in it, and you just kind of push it down into these corners, this made it really structural. Probably doesn't look the best, but it's incredibly strong and zero air pockets. So definitely recommend doing that technique. Okay, so I got the back part sealed up with 5200. I just went around the tubes here, and I covered up that spot. I actually filled it with epoxy first, and which is completely perfect, but I just went the extra measure and rubbed some 5200 over the seal as well. I did the same to the corners. I used epoxy and I just threw some 5200 over it. Completely overkill, but I don't like fixing waterlogged skis. Then there's a little hole here that I put epoxy in, and I'm not even sure what that hole's for, but also put some 5200 over it. So this is the bottom of the hole. It's a little rough, but this is actually in really good condition. I didn't find a single gash that I'll have to fill. These are all pretty surface level. When I sand this area, I might have to make sure there's no micro cracks or anything here. This looks a little bit worn out, but then I filled this area, so I'll have to sand this down. But overall, it looks pretty good. So all I'll be using is just the sander and fairing compound. I won't have to do any type of fiberglass repairs on any of this. This looks a little brittle here, so I might grind this out and fill it with fiberglass, but we'll see. Alright, so for this Yamaha conversion, I'm going to be replacing the X2 shoe as well as the pump. I'm going to be putting a larger 144 millimeter Yamaha shoe in, and a Yamaha, this is a Works 201, but I'm going to be using a Yamaha Superjet intake grate. So what I'm going to be doing, so one nice thing is I realized these two line up the same, so that they're the same width. So that should pretty much slide in there. One thing to note though is, since I'm going to be using this Yamaha scoop grate, which will go this way, you'll have to looks like the holes actually match up perfectly, so I'm going to be grinding this down so that it'll slide into here. Alternatively, you could cut off this area and glass it in, and I don't really like that method because you are introducing a weak point into your hole that water can get into. So I am going to probably grind that down, and if you notice, this is going to be sticking out significantly past this old shoe. So the pump is going to have to be shifted back as well, and this shoe is going to have to be shifted back. So what you're going to end up doing is, if the shoe is coming back more, you're going to be glassing this whole area for the shoe. Just kind of throw glass and epoxy and make a new line here. It'll probably be pretty flush with this. In fact, let me check. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell, but it's, I don't know why it's not lining up on the camera, but it is basically flush with this. So I'm going to make a line right across that point there for the shoe, and hopefully that's what I'm going to be doing. And since the shoe is going to be set back more, you're going to be kind of blending this whole cavern in here to match with the shoe. So, yeah, that actually looks a lot easier than I was expecting, so we'll see how it goes. But the nice thing about these X2s is you've got built-in water lines ready to go for dual cooling, which is pretty sweet. But basically, you're just going to unplug these, unplug that, unscrew the 4 bolts on each side, and then you're going to take these off of the balls and unplug that there, unplug that there, and then for the time being, you can unscrew these because we're going to paint it, or you could leave them in and just kind of wrap it with some type of cover and then paint around it. But before I forget in this video, make sure that these are sealed really well. This one has a little bit of wear here, so this actually looks like a water entrance that I need to repair. So I'm gonna fix this because that's definitely letting water in right there. So 5200 or epoxy to fix that type of thing. So I'm making a decision to grind off the screw holes for a couple of reasons. So when I've done shoes in the past, I tap through and I put a lot of silicone on to make sure that no water gets through the holes. And the screws are kind of unnecessary, especially for this conversion that I'm doing. I'm going to be epoxying this in and putting epoxy everywhere to fill it in and get it to kind of convert to the Kawasaki. So I'm going to be having this mounted to it anyways to kind of push it down, and then it's going to be mounted to this as well, so it's going to be pushing in on it. So I don't think it's going anywhere. The problem is on every corner there was the trim in the way, and down here it raised it so it wouldn't be even with the rest of the line, so it couldn't bolt down there unless I'd grind that off. But I'm still going to run into an issue here, here, and down here on this thing. So really the only place that I could maybe get a bolt would be right here, but that's too close anyways. So I'm just going to put a lot of epoxy to seal it in, and I think that'll make the conversion process a lot easier with having these cut off. So I took a hammer and a screwdriver and just kind of tapped this there was 3 pipes here. I just tapped this third one in and pulled it out from the other side. You don't need this. This is for a stock exhaust system. So what I'm going to do is actually epoxy this flat. That way the shoe can have a little bit more flat area to be epoxied down here. And for this repair here, since I've got the epoxy out, I'm going to fill this in with epoxy, and I'm taping this off because once this is filled in with epoxy, I'll take this off and put the nut system back on, and then put 5200 around the nut to seal it off even more. So, but yeah, just a little bit of fiberglass repair there. This is kind of surprising. This hole was in really good condition, so I'm betting a lot of people have this breakage here, and you should consider fiberglassing it, because that's an entry point for water to waterlog your hole. So when I make filler epoxy, this is about the consistency I like. It's just kind of toothpastey, not quite peanut butter, but just like toothpaste. And I'm just going to glob that in there in those holes and everywhere around there. So I'm going to put the phone down though. So this is after sanding down my basically this paste that I made. I used epoxy, Cabasil, and I just pulled apart fiberglass strands, and I just mixed it all together. And I find that technique a lot easier than just laying mat down, wet mats down, and keep doing layers. It's just a little bit more tedious, but if you just make that mixture and just slam it on and then sand it off, it actually looks really good. So now I'm going to be going over it with a fairing compound, and this should be very structural. So after sanding everything down, everything looks really good, really clean. There's no brittle areas that I was expecting. Everything just sanded down really smoothly. In fact, there was only one real area. So that's the type of weaknesses that you need to look for. I could probably push my finger through this. So what I'm going to do is, so I sanded down the area a little bit, but I'm going to grind just a little bit out of this area and fill this with a epoxy. You don't really want to use a fairing compound, even though it is pretty strong, and I'm pretty sure you'll never have any issues with using a fairing compound. I like to fiberglass these areas with epoxy, and everything else can be filled in with a fairing compound, like gashes like these. All this area here, just fairing compound all of this. Okay, I'm going to do a quick overview of what it looks like when it's all done sanded. As you can see, you're just kind of spot sanding it. It's got a little bit of water to it, but just kind of going over what, to the extent of what I sand. The rest I'm going to be doing a fairing compound to make it all smooth. Alright, I've got the fairing compound added to the hole. I'll just get a kind of a close-up of what it looks like. Now I'm going to sand it all off. Okay, just a quick video of the kind of the halfway point. This is probably doesn't look like it, but it is smooth. I can't feel a single one of these scratches here. It's just baby smooth. And then this is kind of me sanding right here, and this still needs to be sanded. So that's kind of what to expect as you're sanding. You just want to sand it down to where you start seeing white again. That way you know you're perfectly flat, and all these little gashes are filled in. And you can't even feel this at all. Alright, I am done with hole prep. As you can see, I just washed it off, so the greens are kind of highlighted a little bit more. So you can really see all the little areas that got filled in. But now they are just smooth. And you can kind of do the wet test to see how glossy it's going to be. But all those spots are filled in, and they look pretty good. The exhaust is filled in, and I'll be moving it to the other side, or maybe even just more up front. Not sure if I'm doing the other side yet, but that's about it. Next I'll be converting the pump area. After you get done doing the fairing compound, get a air hose and just aim it directly into the repair areas and spray it, because that will show all the pinholes that would be normally covered with dust because when you just wash it off, it just fills the pinholes with dust. So just take your and just go over everything. Just like that. Okay, this is the spot putty, glazing and spot putty by Bondo. And it's you don't have to mix it with a hardener or anything. You just put a little bit of on your finger and you rub it onto the places that need it. So the difference between the fairing compound and the spotting putty, the fairing compound is good at filling in all the cracks, but it's not too great about filling in all the areas. So let me give you an example of an area I missed. So that part actually needs more spot putty. It's got a little divot, which primer should fill in for the most part, but if you want to just make sure that it gets filled in, you put the spot putty on. It dries to touch within minutes, and it's sandable probably within 20 minutes, and it's good to be used even in between a primer and color coat. You can use it on top of the primer, and you just want to fill in all the pinholes. I kind of went crazy because I'm OCD, but this is the last step before primer. And this is what it's like after the spot putty has been sanded. As you can see, there's just bits of green, bits of red, and it's all filled in. Okay, just a quick video. Previously in one of my videos I was explaining, like, you want to get rid of all this sticky residue that vinyl stickers leave over, and I was just suggesting to use like a chemical or something and not to use a sander, because you'll get a lot of waves and bumps in your final paint job product. So what I have instead is a rubber wheel. I picked this up at Harbor Freight, and it makes doing adhesive removal a lot better. First I would take the heat gun and get the vinyl off, because this rubber it's not too effective against the vinyl. It does work, but it takes a while. But to get rid of this sticky residue, these rubber attachments work really well. As you can see, about that much. And I'm kind of at a weird angle just for the video, so I could do it a lot better. I'm trying to do it with one hand. But it rubs it off. You get the idea. It rubs it off really well. I couldn't do it justice because I was doing it with one hand, but anyways, that's how to get adhesive vinyl leftover stuff off. Okay, bye. Okay, I got this all filled in. So just kind of showing you what I shaped it to. And that's pretty much it. The inside doesn't look pretty, but it works. I used pinhole filler, and I used epoxy, and I used a fairing compound to kind of shape everything. So this is the tool I use to scrape up the turf. Then you can just sand the rest off with the sander. That's how it looks clean, but this tool is just awesome. You just put the scraper attachment on, and it just peels up. You just keep scooping. I pull the turf up with one hand, and then I just kind of go back and forth with this, cutting the turf that sticks to the ground. And yeah, this is without doing anything but the multi-tool. And look how much turf came up, and this only took like 2 minutes. And then yeah, just sanding it down. Okay, so what I'm doing is applying a bilge coat. So what I'm using is a brush and something called Total Bilge. And just decided to show you kind of an in-between stage so you can see what it's doing to clean it up. But yeah, it's pretty awesome stuff. You just brush it on and it dries really quickly, and you just want about 2 coats. And what it does is creates a resistant barrier for grease and oil and gas, so that it doesn't ruin your inside of the hole. And you just want to prep everything by sanding it and blowing it out and kind of wiping it up with acetone, and then you just start brushing. Okay, I'm just going over everything you need for this conversion. You're going to need a Ross Products conversion plate to go from Kawasaki to Yamaha. And what sits on top of that is a GP800, basically a mid-shaft housing. It's just an adapter. Really, it just sits onto the conversion plate, onto those 3 holes. And as you can see, there's nothing really to it. All it is just a spacer. And what's going to go onto that is this right here. This is a Superjet or equivalent midshaft, and that will just sit right onto here. Technically, you wouldn't need this if you had a midshaft that had a long enough midshaft, basically, but it just happens to work out that these 3 things give it a perfect amount of space to line right up with each other. From there, you're going to need a Wave Runner 3 drive shaft. There are a few other jet skis that have the same length of drive shaft as a Wave Runner 3, so you'll just want to look that up and see which ones match it. The other thing you're going to need is a Superjet shoe, and what I had to do was cut this off because the holes don't line up to the stock Kawasaki's, and I'm going to be epoxying this in anyways. And then of course just a 144mm Yamaha pump, and everything's going to be the same with this. One thing you're going to have to do is these holes don't line up perfectly in the front here, so you're going to have to actually grind this into a slit instead. Just take out this part, and you may have to make it a slightly bigger as well, so that just means you're going to have a big washer on top there. And then for these holes, you're going to actually drill new ones, which will come out, I think, somewhere around here. So it just happens to fit perfectly for that as well. So you'll just drill new holes for the back of the pump area. And that's pretty much it. What you're going to do, since you actually have to epoxy the shoe in, you're going to want to stick the pump with the drive shaft through this with all those adapters that I showed you hooked in. That way the drive shaft is perfectly centered. Because if you're going to be epoxying in a shoe which has to line up with the pump, you want to epoxy everything in place with the whole pump assembly in place, with the drive shaft going through. That way everything's centered when it dries, and you won't have any cavitation or wobbliness or engine, you know, vibration, which I'll go over as I do it. So my GP 800 midshaft housing was bottoming out, so it wouldn't fit flush. It was pushing up against something, PVC tube. So I actually had to grind off that much, and I just sanded it smooth. So just actually just about this width right here I had to shave off of this tip right here. Now it should fit. So I just wanted to show how easy this alignment is once you get the inside midshaft adapter and conversion stuff all put in. Your drive shaft should then slide in Just gotta find the threading. There it goes. And now you know it's perfectly centered all the way through. So all that's left to do so that part's centered. So now you have to just move it left or right. So what you're going to be looking for, so you do have to put this spacer in, and you want to I would clamp this together so that it's all clamped and centered. So you have to raise it, and you can clamp it together outside first and then put it down the drive shaft. But once this is clamped together and centered, then all you have to do is line those holes up. So see how it doesn't line up perfectly? About half there and about half there. But you just want to make sure it's good left and right. And then what you're going to do is grind this out. Just make a little slot and make this area bigger. And you're probably going to have a bigger washer. And you're going to tighten that down. And then this part, you're going to need a stack of spacers. So you can either fiberglass something, or you can just put a ton of washers here to give it the proper height. And on the bottom side, it should just drill, let's see, so it's going to come out right here. If I can see where my finger's at. Yeah, it's going to come out right here. Right by the bracket. Right there. Wow, I'm a terrible cameraman. So that'll drill through, and then you'll just put a bolt on the other side. And you'll put the bolt through there, out the other side, put a nut on it. And you will have to have it the perfect height. So you want to kind of measure it to where that's centered, and to where it's centered left and right as well. And that's pretty much it. You'll have your pump system installed. And with this centered, so I have to raise this a little bit for it to be flush with the inside. So all this ring has to be completely centered with each other. So that's why I'm saying you need to kind of lift it and clamp it right here. Clamp it together, and then you're gonna, once it's clamped and set in straight and bolted in, at that point you're gonna want to fill epoxy in between these gaps. These gaps here. And just let it sit centered, let it dry. Just kind of tack it in with epoxy in a few places and make sure that these underneath the sidewalls all epoxied in, and then you're going to let it dry. Then you're going to take all this out, and then you're going to finish epoxying it. So you're going to smooth out this layer, smooth out here, fill epoxy in here, all the way through here, all the way through here, with the pump system fully out. That's when you're going to do all the epoxy work. And once this shoe's in, it's already aligned and you don't need to shim it because you already did the shim work with setting the spacers. So you're pretty much done at that point. At that point you can paint your ski and put the pump back in. Alright, first big problem, which isn't too big. So I drilled from underneath to place the back part of the pump, the bolts, and where I was drilling was right there. That's where it came through on both sides. So there's a little bit of a corner that I'm going to remove. This part of the bracket isn't too needed. What it does is prevents the back part of this seat from shifting this way and this way, but this kind of helps it anyways, and then the bar holds it up and down. These just help a little bit. So what I'm going to do is cut on those black lines. That'll give it enough room to put a bolt, the cap of a bolt there, and that should be pretty good. So I'm just going to cut that little section off, and having half of that should be fine. I mean, we'll see. Let me know if anybody else has done anything differently. So this is the end result. I'm gonna have a washer and a nut there. That just goes right through. And have it on both sides. Just like that. Did make this a little bit weaker, but it's still plenty strong. It just kind of helps the seat from not shifting too much, but it's already pretty snug. So you could probably just grind them off, but I kept them. I did have to make a little bit more room for the washer, so I shaved off just a corner on the corner there. I might put a little bit more epoxy on it to give it a bit more strength, but other than that, it turned out pretty good. That's how it's going to bolt the pump underneath. It's going to go right through the holes there. The other one is not used anymore, the middle one, so we're going to use that one and the new one there. Okay, so this is what I had to do for the pump. The bolt actually kind of sat off to the right and to the lower right corner, and it was so close to the edge that I just had to grind all of it out. Had to do that to both sides. It's that's why it looks a little bit off on one side. It's because it's supposed to sit right down there. So I'm just gonna have to have a washer that sits flat on top. It might have to be a pretty big washer, and but these ones will be a perfect fit. I'm doing those through hole, so it shouldn't slide around. We'll just have to torque it on tight. That's what I did. On to the next step. So this worked out pretty slick. What I did was get some nylon spacers off Amazon, and this 30 millimeter literally slips right in that gap, and I can't stress this enough, it slips in there perfect. and it lines it up pretty good. I might raise the whole thing. I think it needs to come up just a little bit. I think it's sitting a little bit too low. Like right there looks pretty good. So I might have to put 1 or 2 washers underneath. Or this actually might be perfect. So this nylon kit came with 2 different sizes, or 3 different sizes: a 30 millimeter, a 15, and a 10 and a 5. So I might use 2 more here and put maybe 1 more up there as well. And but yeah, these things are pretty sweet. I think nylon's pretty durable. If anybody thinks otherwise, please let me know. I guess the alternative would be to not go through the hole. It would be to fiberglass something in place. I looked it up and you can actually fiberglass nylon into place. So I could, you know, fiberglass that nylon and maybe do a threaded insert, something like that. But I'm pretty happy with doing this bolt system here. And like I said, 30 millimeters was pretty much perfect. And then I got this length here. Can't remember, I think this was like an 80. You could probably get away with doing a 60 millimeter. This is just a little bit too long. But all your goal is to make sure that that is centered completely. And there's a picture of my cut ends. And you're gonna have a washer in the stock bolts. You can mount it to the stock location there. And like I said, these are not being used. I'll fill those with epoxy. And then you just glass the shoe into place with everything set the way it is and bolted in, and then let the epoxy dry with the shoe in place and everything. Alright, I'm gonna mix up some thickened epoxy. I got this from US Composites. It's a 3-to-1 ratio medium hardener. We're gonna make a kind of a concoction here. So we're gonna do 3-to-1, so that's 1 pump, 2 pumps, 3 pumps. It's coming out pretty easy because it's a pretty hot day. That also means it's gonna harden faster. I should still have like an hour or 2 to work with, but I'm just gonna mix it up first. Mix it pretty good. You want to scrape the edges. Make sure you're not getting any non-mixed epoxy in there, and you just want to stir it real good. Scrape the bottoms, scrape the corners. You want to mix it real good. Keep scraping the corners, make sure everything gets mixed in there. So that's pretty mixed. We're going to keep mixing it though. But what I'm going to do first is add some Cabosil. I got this on Amazon. You can get it cheaper through US Composites. But it's just really light stuff. You can't even feel it in your hand. And we're going to mix a decent amount in there. And it's really hard to mix. It's so light it just kind of fluffs around in the cup. Make sure you don't want to breathe it. Scrape the sides. Get all that Cabosil mixed in there. So you can see it's not the consistency we want yet. It's very runny. I would say this is just a little bit thicker than tomato soup. It's more like a glue right now. So we're going to add another cupful. And just keep mixing. You don't want it as thick as peanut butter, you want it as thick as toothpaste. So, I don't know what to compare to right now, but it's still pretty runny. Make sure it's all mixed in before you put more in it. It's almost there, probably like one more scoop of Cabasol. So you can see you can use Cabasol up pretty quickly. It's good to get a big jar of it. So I imagine this is going to be pretty good. I'll show you the consistency here in a sec. Alright, so this might be a little too thick. Let me show you what it looks like here in a second. I mean, too thick is fine. I like it a little runny. So this is definitely peanut butter consistency, which a lot of people aim for. I personally like it a little bit less thick. I like it like toothpaste. But next thing we're going to do is we're going to take about that much fiberglass and we're just going to pull it to shreds. I'm even going to cut it up even more. Probably just about that much. And we're going to mix it some more. So, this is a great gap filler if you need something really structural. It's just a step above thickened epoxy. It's got glass to it. And we're going to use this to fill the shoe area. Alright, I'm going to mix up some thickened epoxy. I got this from US Composites. It's a 3-to-1 ratio medium hardener. We're going to make a kind of a concoction here. So we're going to do 3-to-1, so that's 1 pump, 2 pumps, 3 pumps. It's coming out pretty easy because it's a pretty hot day. That also means it's going to harden faster. I should still have like an hour or two to work with. But I'm just going to mix it up first. Mix it pretty good. You want to scrape the edges. Make sure you're not getting any non-mixed epoxy in there. And you just want to stir it real good. Scrape the bottoms, scrape the corners. You want to mix it real good. Keep scraping the corners, make sure everything gets mixed in there. So that's pretty mixed. We're going to keep mixing it though. But what I'm going to do first is add some Cabasol. I got this on Amazon. You can get it cheaper through US Composites. But it's just really light stuff. You can't even feel it in your hand. And we're going to mix a decent amount in there. And it's really hard to mix. It's so light it just kind of fluffs around in the cup. Make sure you don't want to breathe it. Scrape the sides. Get all that Cabasol mixed in there. So you can see it's not the consistency we want yet. It's very runny. I would say this is just a little bit thicker than tomato soup. It's more like a glue right now. So we're going to add another cupful. And just keep mixing. You don't want it as thick as peanut butter, you want it as thick as toothpaste. So, I don't know what to compare to right now, but it's still pretty runny. Make sure it's all mixed in before you put more in it. It's almost there, probably like one more scoop of Cabasol. So you can see you can use Cabasol up pretty quickly. It's good to get a big jar of it. So I imagine this is going to be pretty good. I'll show you the consistency here in a sec. Alright, so this might be a little too thick. Let me show you what it looks like here in a second. I mean, too thick is fine. I like it a little runny. So this is definitely peanut butter consistency, which a lot of people aim for. I personally like it a little bit less thick. I like it like toothpaste. But next thing we're going to do is we're going to take about that much fiberglass and we're just going to pull it to shreds. I'm even going to cut it up even more. Probably just about that much. And we're going to mix it some more. So, this is a great gap filler if you need something really structural. It's just a step above thickened epoxy. It's got glass to it, and we're going to use this to fill the shoe area. So I got it marked off. And we're just gonna pre-fill all the areas that I marked off with marker. And that was a perfect amount of epoxy and fiberglass, by the way. Just probably a sixth of a cup. Okay, so I can feel it hardening up already, actually. So I gotta quickly put my pump in. So I'm gonna show you what happened. It squeezed out, which is what I wanted. Just enough for it to squeeze out, and not a very good cameraman. But that's what I was looking for. It's always good to be as least messy as you can. So swapping out gloves is always a good thing. It's less sanding you have to do for areas you may have touched with your gloves. And it's just better in my experience to get new gloves. So now I'm just kind of flattening it out. Alright, so let's align this thing. Basically, you want to make marks prior to putting in glass to make sure it's all lined up correctly. Just spend a lot of time pre-fitting everything so that it doesn't go left or right to where you want it. I've already drilled the holes. So I'm gonna put those bolts in here. So it should be good left and right now. Now you just want to feel around on the inside and raise this shoe so that it's even with the seam on the inside. You want there to be even amount of height on this shoe. On both of these sides here. Keep a towel with you so you can wipe off your hands. So that is perfect. So I'm going to clamp this down. Not too tight. And then you want to push on the back of the pump. So that it pushes the shoe in at the bottom. And just before you let it dry, just make sure it's all centered. You only get one shot. Okay, so I put a second layer of epoxy in all the way around the shoe. So the first layer was just to kind of set it in place, just kind of tack it in the key areas here and kind of down here in the seams. But now I went through and put epoxy a little bit better into all the grooves. So it's completely sealed now. The next thing I'm going to do is do a fairing compound to make this a nice smooth transition area and sand it down quite a bit. Alright, I'm gonna be filling in the shoe area with Total Fair. So I'm just gonna show you how you guys do that. You're gonna have two parts, a blue and a yellow, and you're just going to take equal parts. I'm actually going to be needing quite a bit, so but I'm just going to be filling in all the voids. Surface area should be cleaned. So I'll probably do 2 layers. This first time around, I'm just kind of filling in all the voids. The next layer, I'll make sure everything's nice and flat and kind of shaped to the hole. You want the water to kind of stream in, so it's nice and water dynamic. I guess that's the word. Aerodynamic, but with water. Okay, I got it sanded, and then I just finished putting on a second layer. Just a quick video to show what the second layer looks like. It's getting shape. Nothing special though. Okay, I've got everything smoothed out. This is kind of what it looks like. I also filled in this area to make it a little bit higher. That way it has a smooth glide right down onto it so that it doesn't go down and then hit this wall. So build up this layer so that it's a nice incline over that. And yeah, this conversion kind of worked out really nice. With this flat against this part here, it just so happens that Superjet intake grate fits perfectly. I will have to notch this, so I'll take a grinder and notch it, and the bolts should still have some grip to bolt it down. So the holes don't line up perfectly, but the backside holes do. And this worked out pretty good. So I'll show some pictures after I grind this out. So the last stage I'm going to do is use some of this glazing putty. It's actually pretty easy. You just put some on your finger, and you just want to cover all the pinholes and go over kind of everything with it. I'm doing this with one hand, but you just want to go over pretty much everything. You're just going to smear it into these pinholes, and it takes about 20 minutes to dry, and then you can sand over it. It's really easy to sand, so it's a good finishing touch for this shoe area. Okay, glazing putty is applied. Now I'll sand it. Okay, this is the final product. That's that area there. Okay, I just got it all primed up. It made it look really clean inside. I mean, that is just a seamless transition. Really happy about how that turned out. So this conversion will be perfect, I think. Anyways, as you can see, all my imperfections went away. There's not a single scratch, as you can see. My camera can't even focus because it's all smooth, but looks good. Okay, so just got it painted. Turned out pretty good. The next thing I did was installed a pump stuffer, which is this flat device here. All you have to do is put a bead of silicone around the edges, and it reduces the area in the pump, and it kind of guides the water directly down into your pump area, into your shoe. So definitely recommend getting a pump stuffer. I think Pro Watercraft Racing sells them. That's where I got this one. They work great. So this is pretty cool. I watched a video online, and I was having troubles putting these on just by themselves. These are the bearings for my drive shaft that go into the vane, and this was just stupid simple. Just buy new bearings. You can tap the old ones off, just get them off however you can, and once they're off, basically you want to put the drive shaft in the freezer, and probably about 2 hours later, take it out. And towards the end of the 2 hours, you want to put your bearings in the oven at 300 degrees. And I don't know, bake them for probably a half hour, maybe a little less. And then take the drive shaft out of the freezer, and these just literally slide on. If they don't just slide on with zero force, then just put this in the freezer longer, and put the bearings in the oven longer. Maybe turn up the temperature, but I put it at 300 degrees and was exactly probably about a half hour, and they just slid right on. And past that, you're going to want to surround this with marine grade grease. Just kind of pack it just all the way around this area, just in between there as well. Just completely fill it. Then you're going to freeze the whole thing again, and you are going to put this in the oven and bake this at 300 degrees for a half hour. And you're going to put like I said, put this in the freezer for 2 hours and let the grease and everything kind of freeze. And then you just plop it right in there, and it just sucks down in there. And that's pretty much it. Then you're going to put the seals on. The seals go this way first. Push that in. And then you're going to put this in on top. And that's how you do the seals. And then obviously the cone goes here. Make sure it's all packed with grease. Whoops. The cone sits on top. And make sure it's also packed with grease. That's pretty much it. Okay, I'm going to install the pump. So you're going to want to have the ring in place. This is to give it a good seal on the shoe. Make sure you have inlets for both of the water lines. And you're going to put this down, in my case, the pump stuffer. It's just going to slide right down in there. And you might have to twist this a little bit to get the teeth to grab inside. And I've already gone over this before in the video, but I had to drill out, kind of groove out a slot on each side so that the bolts can fit through on this conversion. And I tap this to go from the other side. And then you're going to hook this into the ball here. And then you're going to attach the cooling line here, and then this one you're going to have to feed from this side. So I'm either going to go above it or below this part. It's got a route to this other side here and hook into one of these two cooling lines. So once you got this turning cable plugged in and the cooling lines hooked up, just bolt it in and you're good to go. Okay, I got the pump installed. I did notice that I had to get a extension, so the steering bracket, this cable doesn't reach this when it's fully turned to the left here. So I found that Ross Products has a steering extension, so you just screw it onto the tip here and it extends it out to the length that you need. So pretty easy solution there, and this pump is ready to go. All I did was bolt on the ride plate. I actually had to cut the ride plate because now that the shoe extends past where it used to, this new shoe extends way out here, I actually had to cut into the ride plate And I bought this one from Pro Watercraft Racing. It's got some flex to it, and it's kind of a thick, I don't know, plasticky material. It's not plastic, it's definitely durable, but one thing I also had to do, which you probably can't see it, but on the bottom side of this, I had to grind out a pretty big chunk out of the middle so that it doesn't bump up against the top of the pump, or else it was wobbling because it was centering onto the pump. So I did have to take a grinder and kind of shave off kind of a valley for the pump to sit into. And then, of course, like I mentioned, I had to cut into this, and it dropped in there perfectly fine. Other thing I did was, you saw earlier from a video that I kind of reshaped this area here, and I filled it in with some silicone. That way it just glides nice and easy, doesn't get hung up on anything, and it covers up all the screws. And I did the same thing for this area, filled it all with silicone, filled this in with silicone. That way it just has nothing for water to come into and cause cavitation, I guess you could say. So but yeah, that's done. I'm gonna be flipping the ski over and painting it and putting in the engine next. So I ran into my first issue. I put the nose on, and this part right up top here was hitting up against this nut, so it was preventing the turn nozzle from fully turning. So what I'm going to do is cut this bracket off. This is just a plastic, so I'm going to cut this off and move it down just about a half an inch, and I'm going to epoxy and fiberglass it on and make sure it's strong, and make sure you just keep it the same distance. So make sure this nut is even with this line when you move it downwards. So small modification. That's kind of the only one of few that I ran into. So make sure you adjust that so that it doesn't hit the pump bolt here. Alright, so I got done fiberglassing it. It's basically just set down. You can see the cut line, but it's just moved down a quarter of an inch. That's actually all it needed. I glassed it all the way around to give it structure, and yeah, I'm gonna have to repaint it again, but that fit nice and snug in there. One more thing I had to do, I had to glass in the bottom half of that circle that I cut out, and that'll fit there nicely now. Okay, one more thing I had to do. Sorry for the shading, but I had to cut a little groove here and a little notch there, and I had to make this area a little bit deeper. Reason being is because when you put this on, these back holes bottom out right where those notches are. So you need to kind of make little slits, and then, like I said, you need to make this one deeper, or else it'll bottom out on that. So, anyways, they say this in the instructions, but there's a visual in case you didn't realize the importance of it. Okay, one more thing I had to do. Sorry for the shading, but I had to cut a little groove here and a little notch there, and I had to make this area a little bit deeper. Reason being is because when you put this on, these back holes bottom out right where those notches are. So you need to kind of make little slits, and then, like I said, you need to make this one deeper or else it'll bottom out on that. So anyways, they say this in the instructions, but there's a visual in case you didn't realize the importance of it. Alright, so before I drop the engine in, I'm actually going to do the tubbies so I know where to put the exhaust outlet, which is going to go up here, but I need to fit the tubbies. So what you need to do is put a piece of tape. You're going to measure from the back to 44 and a fourth, and you're just going to put a piece of tape there. And what you're going to do is make it so the hole in the back, you can see the middle of the tape, just that front line of the tape. And from what I could tell, you're going to want to push this back up as far as you can, but have like a finger's length at the top. So just kind of be able to put your finger at the top there. So line it up with the line, put a finger in, then you're going to drop this down to match the bottom curvature. So you're going to do all this at once. It'd be good to have a second person help you, but I'm kind of a loser, so I'm going to use tape. So once it's good, just kind of lock it in with some tape. And then you're going to drill holes with a 11/64 drill bit. You're going to start from the front and just work your way back. Once the holes are tapped, you're going to take it off and you're going to silicone the entire back, and you're going to put it on and use the included screws to screw it in there. And once you're done, I'll kind of show you. That should just fit right up in there for your exhaust. Alright, let's get to it. Okay, one thing to notice, the reason why it's exactly 44 and a fourth from this line here is on the other side, you might drill through this if you go far too back this way. And you basically just drill into this small little crevice here with the screw hole, and it doesn't puncture through, but it just does a very small pinhole right here. Yep, right where my finger's at, right here. So any further this way, you're going to run into some issues. So definitely 44 and a fourth is maximum for the pinhole, for the 11/64 drill bit. Feel free to move it up further if you need, but definitely follow the instructions and you'll be fine. Okay, they're going to use bead silicone and put it around the edges. And just going to put that on here. too messy. Try to put it right on the holes. Just going to set that perfectly into place. Alright, so here's the test fitting. The pipe fits in there perfectly. I put the head pipe on and kind of checked it. Everything looks good. We'll see though. Down below, it joined up perfectly, which is awesome. Thanks to the RAS conversion plate and everything. Yeah, all that's good. The Superjet gas tank fits perfectly. Just have to round that corner a little bit there so it doesn't puncture it and rub and eventually bust through your gas tank. I'm probably going to cut that down a little bit more, sand it a little bit more as well, maybe put some padding on it. It's better to be safe than sorry. With the gas tank pushed back, it does have clearance. Has clearance on this side too for the mod. The mod actually has a pretty good clearance as well. So definitely get the mod pipe. In the back, I made a platform for the HX Sea-Doo HX water box. It's got a 2-inch intake with a 2.3 exit, which lines up to the RAS conversion exit, which I'm going to install right there. So it'll be right in front of the tubbies. And what else? So this is the next task I'm going to do. I'm going to put the water box down there. I did grind off all the stock fuel line holder area. If you've ever seen an X2, you'll notice that this area used to be a carb holder or pump holder bracket, and I just shaved it all off. And I kept these, so just kind of cut them off, but keep them. You could just wrap this with flotation tubes and just kind of jam it in there, and it shouldn't move too much. But I'm going to use these, and I'm going to measure that hole from that hole, take everything out, and mount these, glass these to the side. Just like that. I'm going to glass these guys in, and I'm going to mount it right where you see it there, just as low as I can go, up on the side there. When doing air filters, don't get any big ones. I mean, these work fine. It actually is just barely grazing here. My manifold is actually kind of an odd one. High Speed Industries sent me carbs that were pre-configured and everything, but the bracket was too big. For whatever reason, the manifold that I got actually is closer together than most of the other ones. So I kind of lucked out, and it's good. So I'm really happy about that. If you don't get this type of manifold, you might have to get the smaller Tornadoes. They're just half the size of these bigger ones, and that should fit perfectly, even if you do have a normal manifold. Past that, you'll probably want to get a single carb and do like an SBN 48 or 46, and that'll also be, you know, good. I like dual carbs, but yeah, everything's lining up perfect. The only other thing that I've got to do now that I'm kind of visualizing everything is this gas tank will have a cap here, but this I've got to route to this external fill that I did. If you want to make this even easier, I would just do a internal fill and replace this and block that off. And but I'm gonna have to do a tube, some type of zigzag tube to hook up to this external fill that I glassed in. Yeah, this project's coming along. Stay tuned. So if you want to know where I'm gonna start the where I'm gonna tack in, wherever I put them, oh, in my pocket, where I'm gonna tack in this, I'm gonna put the first one right there, and then the other one however far distance is from there. So that seemed like a pretty good spot. So, and then just shave all that stock stuff off. Alright, so I'm gonna install the Ross external exhaust adapter thingy. So what I'm gonna do, you can't really put the find the center that easily with this, so you want to use the other side. And you're basically just going to mark the exact center. And then you're going to drill a hole. The reason why you're going to drill a hole is because the saw can't fit in there because of this lip here. So I'm going to do a hole in the exact center. That looks about good. And I'll explain why in a second. Now, you want to equip your circular saw, and you're going to come in from the other side. Now, you're left with a hole that fits perfectly for. And on the other side, alright, here's the end product there. I put some 5200 on the inside as well to kind of fill the gap. Yeah, it looks nice from the inside. Still got to do another screw there, but yeah, it looks good. Alright, I've got it all masked off. Gonna be doing the paint next. Before I did the paint, I filled in all the little pinholes that I could. These are kind of what I filled in on the top. Some of the things I won't need anymore. Some of the holes I won't need anymore. Filled in this because I'm going to reposition it. All this looks good. Alright, and I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. Alright, I got it painted. Turned out awesome. Nice and glassy. Nice and smooth. I already started working on my next project. So I cut off this top part. It just didn't transition well now that I removed and redid this cover here. So I actually just rounded off and smoothed the edges to this. And I have a new cover coming in that will just wrap around this. And what I'm going to do is put a thick padding right here that goes up to this edge here. And then I'm going to put my front dash panel right here. So this will kind of look a little bit smoother than having clunky seat there. But it'll still have padding here. I'll put turf over it. I'll wrap the turf around this line here. And I'll put some thick padding right there so I don't have can bump it. And the padding, this will slide right underneath the padding, so it'll just transition really smooth. But yeah, I am going to put the front dash here, meaning the bilge and the build switch and the primer. Just two little things there. But yeah, it's looking good. Alright, so I'll keep this explanation short because I'm using an aftermarket part. So I did the front fill on it, and all you have to do is drill starter holes for all these here and use a circular saw to cut it through. I think I used a 2-inch and cut right through, and then make sure to have the seal that goes right there underneath. And I bought this from High Speed. It's just a nice belay cap, and that is ready to go. Okay, here's some footage of the bilge install. So I put some glue under here and mounted the blue bracket onto the hole. I actually flattened down this rib right here so that this will sit flat. And this just ties up here, and that'll go to wherever you're doing your bilge switch. And I did a one-way valve, so water can only flow this direction, because I'm going to do the hookup right here. And it's all tucked behind here, so it's not interfering with the carbs. And that's a pretty good location. All I did was take a circular drill bit and cut into there. And you're going to put one of these to hook into. That goes on the other side there. Okay, so I hooked up the steering. I am going to cover that back part there with some glass, and I'm going to have to retouch up the paint there. I don't actually need that. I was going to route some wires and put the dash here, but I'm going to actually put the dash right here. That way there won't be any extra chance of getting water through the hole. So I'm going to clog that up. So anyways, this is the Umi steering. It's pretty straightforward. You just have 4 bolts, and that's it. The turning bracket hooks up to this right here, and you want to keep this stock tube. This will prevent water from getting in here. It also kind of protects the inside a little bit. I also went with a Yamaha start-stop switch, so this will just stop right up to the Yamaha setup there, e-box. So not much to say about steering. It's really straightforward. I got this on eBay. This is actually my favorite and cheapest throttle cable. Everybody that uses it says they love it. I think it's like $26. awesome finger throttle. It's even got a little bit of a grip here for the finger. Definitely recommend, 10 out of 10. Alright, I got the IPD graphics on. Looks great. My other video with the Superjet Restoral kind of goes over how to apply graphics. So I'm not going to cover it again, but just some quick tips. Make sure to wet your fingers. Put a lot of the material. There's a rapid tack solution you should buy. 100% you should buy it. You spray it on both sides, the ski and the vinyl, and then you lay it down. If you have to take the sticker off and reposition it, it just makes it a lot easier. Make sure to, if you do take it off, to reapply the rapid tack on both sides. And then you want to slowly use a squeegee. Just the first wipe is very light. Just really kind of just barely get all the water bubble out. Then you want to slowly put more and more pressure, and eventually you're going to use your hand and kind of rub out the edges mainly. You want to get all the nice seams and put a lot of pressure on the edges. And then you want to let it dry for about 4 or 5 days before using it on the water. You definitely want to get a precision cut blade, scalpel, which is this right here. And that makes cutting the edges a lot easier. So this is what I made for the gas tank. Basically I just bought a Belay 2-inch coupler off Amazon, actually. I think it was 10 bucks. And then I bought one of these right angle 2-inch silicone corners, and they were 9 bucks each. So this whole thing was about 30 bucks, and it allows me to route the gas fill right into the Superjet gas tank. You can use a stock gas tank instead, and you can hook directly up into an external fill like this. I wanted to do everything Superjet, so this was the solution for that. Okay, so because I trimmed the seat, and I'm going to turf this area here, I put 2 holes as low as I can this way. The reason being is because, let me see if I can look in there. There's, I guess you can't see it, but there's a metal post that you just gotta shave down. So I used a metal filer to just file down that post. And what this is gonna be for is the primer and the build switch. So those just go right inside there. And it's going to be a nice front panel. This is what it looks like from the back side. As you can see, I had to grind down that post, and the same for the other side. And it's a nice spot to put a bilge and primer. So the battery box was a little bit harder to get to work with the gas tank than I thought. So I had to grind down this even further. Just pretty much take that whole section off. And I also cut this part off as well as this angle, so it's rounded around the gas tank. And everything should still work perfectly fine. Straps will still I'm going to go from that strap to here, kind of at an angle, to strap down the battery. The battery shouldn't fall out this way because it's going to have the gas tank here. As you can see, I did cut off quite a bit just so that it doesn't rub against the gas tank. The way I'm going to be strapping down the gas tank is going to be from that one, so it'll have two things there. I'm going to put a strap all the way around and hook to that, and then from here to there, and then from here to there for the gas tank. So the gas tank's going to have two, and it worked out really nicely. Oh, and the other thing I finished doing was routing the bilge wires across, and then I'll have it with the e-box over here, the two wires over here, and it should clear this. As long as you use this to kind of hold it in place, it'll clear the turn cable. So in retrospect, I probably wouldn't have done this mod. The stock X2 gas tank fits this perfectly. You wouldn't have to cut this at all. You wouldn't have to do this bend here. The hose would go straight to the gas tank. There's really no reason to use a Superjet gas tank, so I kind of messed up on that. But everything will look Superjet-like, so I'm happy about that. Alright, one last checklist before I put the engine in. I hooked up a lot of things preemptively, that way it kind of goes in easier. So I hooked up the starter cable, because those are always really hard to get to. So I got the power cable there. I do have the ground, just kind of sitting on the ground because it requires a bolt to stick it in. So I've got the ground sitting there, and it's made its way over to the battery. I've got the bilge cables ran, so that'll just sit right up there and give it power. I've got it looped around. These are the spark plug boots. I'm going to put those on the side there. The only other thing I ran was this goes into the flywheel cover. So I've got the engine sitting on the side here. That way the cable will reach because it's plugged into the e-box. I've got the start-stop switch ran, and it's just kind of tucked away under here, and this is where it plugs into. And that's the e-box. The only other thing I'm going to have to hook into is the throttle. And the other things that I have preemptively hooked up are the tubes. You don't want to forget these. They're really hard to get your hands in here to hook these up if you've got the B-pipe already attached. So definitely hook these in before you drop them in. I've got to put some clamps on these first so they don't come off. And give yourself plenty of room to hook into there. You want to be able to slide your engine out all the way to the front. So make sure that your water hoses have enough room to kind of slide out with your engine and they don't come unplugged. And other than that, she's ready to go. I would probably hook these up too if you haven't already. That way it's a lot harder to reach in there when no engine's in there. As far as the front goes, just have your clamps ready to plug in, and this is for the B-pipe, just have that ready as well. And make sure all this is fastened and padded. Make sure there's some padding back there, and this is also some padding for the gas tank. And you're going to do the battery box and container last. That'll be your very last thing you put in to your engine. Alright, I'm going to take some halfway in between footage of how I'm dropping this engine in. So, couple things. I would put the engine just right up here, and that we have a lot of room to work with back here while you hook up everything. What I ended up doing, there's the starter cable, the starter power cable, which I just routed from my e-box over here. I tied it to the water lines. What you don't want that happen is to have your water lines rest on your manifold, and you don't want them to rest on your B-pipe head pipe. So what I had to do is I had to put the engine up here, and then at that point plug in the starter power ground cable, and then, you know, push in the starter. Before I even dropped it in, I attached the water lines to the bottom of this, and put some fasteners on them to clamp them down. And yeah, then I put in the starter. Make sure you have the starter power cable completely straight, perpendicular out. That way you can also have your water lines very straight, because the B-pipe just rests right up against here, and you don't want those water lines touching. So anyways, this is the ground cable that I'm running from the starter. It's just going to run up here. This is the stock position. You can have some tie downs right here, and this will hook right up to the battery, which will be right here. And I ran this just on the other side of the e-box, and I cut it short. So here's my 2 power wires, and this will be for the bilge, and these hook right into there. Yeah, I'm just trying to go over everything. So I'm not coupled in yet. That's going to be my very last thing that I do, is couple that in. And the water lines go back there. I hooked them in first. I had the engine slid forward, and I hooked those in first, and I tightened them down, and then I kind of slid the engine forward. But make sure you have a lot of slack on your water lines, because you're going to be pulling your engine in and out for maintenance. So give yourself a lot of water line room. I got these from Rad Dudes. There's some heavy duty water lines that I really like. They're not that see-through crap that degrades over time. Yeah, so the next thing to do while the engine is, you know, not coupled in yet. So I found the only way to put this in is with the engine slid forward. So with it slid forward a little bit, you want to have your water line attached to it preemptively. And that just kind of slides right in there. I'm doing this one-handed, but that slides in there. And once that's in there, that's pretty much the... oh yeah, you want to tie this down first, because you won't be able to get a wrench in there. So have everything set, have all these screws turned out before you put all this in, have this side attached, and then you're going to put it in, and then you're going to slide the engine back and couple that in, and put in your 4 bolts to mount it down the engine. I haven't done that yet, and I think that's going to be pretty hard to do, so we'll see how that goes. I'm thinking I have to kind of move that over here and not put it in yet, just kind of have it sitting back here, and then I've got to slide it back and then do the engine bolts, and then mount this on, and then do the B-pipe. All the other bolts I should be able to get to. It's just this rear back one that I'm kind of worried about, but I'll let you know how that goes. Past that, everything should be good. Alright, just a quick problem resolved. So the throttle cable that is stock with the X2 was too short. It came down right here, so it didn't have a plate that it can hook into. So I got one that wrapped all the way through, and instead of this coming into the front, it goes to the back and it loops under the E-box and comes right here and hooks into the stock wheel right here, and it's perfect. Full throttle, full wheel engagement, and just a slight amount of slack, which is perfect. So couldn't ask for anything better. I think it's a Kawasaki because I had to use an adapter. So it's probably a Kawasaki 750 SXI throttle cable. So in case you just want one that you know fits, it had just enough slack to go right up to here, and then you had to buy an adapter, which I already had, to hook into that. So yeah. Alright, it's getting late. So that back bolt ended up being the easiest one. Same with that one and that one. That back left one was actually the hardest. As you can see, it's right there. I had to reach my hand over there and barely get it tight. I hope it's tight. I think it's tight. It's as tight as it's gonna get. The rest of them are torqued to spec, and anyways, time to put in the B pipe and the gas tank and let it rip. Okay, I'm gonna go over the changes that I did for routing the water box. I found this to be the best route. The pipe is best angled in order for the two metal pieces, the head pipe and the chamber, to pair up and mate with metal on metal inside this coupler. In order for it to not be at an angle, this pipe had to be angled down almost to the ground. So in order to raise it back up, I had to do a right angle upwards and then a right angle to the right. And the water box is also kind of at a slant. It can be straight up and down. You might have to get a little bit longer hose right here. But I just cut a really short right angle and then another really short right angle, and just angled the water box just slightly. And that worked out great. The other one just exit outs right there to the exit here. And that worked out perfect. The way I joined these two right angles together is with two couplers and a metal barbed insert in the middle there. I just went on Amazon and bought a stainless or aluminum, I believe, or stainless still works, 2-inch or 2.3-inch, I believe, coupler, and that worked out perfectly. So anyways, I'm done now. I've got all this tightened up. This is nice and snug. Last thing I'm going to do is drop in the gas tank and hook it up right there, and I'll be done. Just hook up these wires to the battery. So this is how you make a template for doing turf. Just take some masking tape and mask everywhere you're going to have turf. And then you just peel it off, stick it on the back of the roll of turf, and cut it. Just showing you how I cut one on one side and used the same template and flipped it over. And you just take a razor blade and cut around it. Pretty straightforward. Already got one done. Slipped right in there. All right, I am back. It's been a whole winter. I got this thing finished at the end of summer, so I wasn't able to ride it and test it or even turn it on. It's pretty cold in Idaho, so anyways, today's our first 50-degree day, so I'm gonna try to start her up. I think we'll have nothing but nice warm weather from here on out. So anyways, I just put some gas in it, and I forgot I was making a YouTube video, so I already started churning it, but I wanted you guys to see it start up if it is going to. It started to get some life, so anyways, we'll see. Yes. Anyways, it's not tuned. Carb's not set at all. So that's why it's just not remaining. But anyways, that's good news. I've got a whole tank of gas of 30-to-1 ratio in it. So yeah, I'll go take it out to the water and see what happens. All right, she is all tuned, cleaned, ready to go. And I'm gonna do one last start her up so you can see how she sounds.